Welcome to Bloomington Rotary Club's weekly celebration of service for July 18th. I'm Ron Barnes, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be your president. And I congratulate all of you, number one, for getting here because you had two impediments. First one was parking. Second one, we changed rooms on you at the last minute. So you're really good at this. So I really appreciate that. I do want to start with a quote of the day, which is, "Things work out best for those who make the best of how things work out." John Wooden, from his book, Pyramid for Success. So, our reflection today is Judy Schroeder. Judy?
Good afternoon. There's a banner hanging outside the Kurt Vonnegut Museum and Library in Indianapolis. It's a quote from the native Hoosier. "Live so that if your life were turned into a book, Indiana would ban it." The likelihood that your book would be banned increased exponentially in May when Governor Holcomb signed a bill that allows parents and community members to request the banning of books they deem obscene or harmful to minors. Public and charter schools must post on their websites a list of the books in their libraries. Interest groups can then compare that list against a list of books they have declared offensive. If your life were a book, you would be banned if you do anything, are anything, contrary to what an organized posse of vigilantes thinks is acceptable. You're particularly suspect if you're gay or a person of color. In 2022, the American Library Association counted a record number of book bans, nearly twice the number reported in 2021. The vast majority of those books were by or about Black or gay people. Indiana ranks 6th among states in numbers of books banned. Let's be clear about this. One person who doesn't want a child to read a book can make that book unavailable to all children. The vocal minority can put you, if your life were turned into a book, on an enemies list. Fully 40% of demands for censorship include 100 or more books. 90% target multiple titles. In 1976, Indiana banned the American Heritage Dictionary because it contained inappropriate entries. A friend of mine, now in his 70s, grew up in rural Wisconsin. He told me that as a teenager, he wept when he found the word homosexual in a dictionary. That meant he wasn't the only one. The Indiana bill specifies that banned titles are offensive to the standards in the adult community with respect to what is suitable for minors. But it's really not the adult community that is speaking. It's a few people who, however high-minded they may consider their motives, have set themselves up as judge and jury. They are making your choices for you. Doesn't this strike you as a tad arrogant? I'm reminded of the words of Václav Havel, the Czech playwright and president. Keep the company of those who seek the truth. Run from those who have found it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. It reminds me what it's like being a school administrator as you talk about all those issues facing schools today. The introduction of guests will be our own member, Peggy Frisbee.
Today we have 5 guests with us. And when I call your name, would you please stand up so that we can recognize you? So first we have Christy Trendelman, a guest of Raj Hadawi. Welcome. Christy is with HealthNet. We also have Hannah Gorman, also a guest of Raj, and with HealthNet. Welcome. Melissa Stone, who is a guest of our own Jim Bright, who is connected with mental health. Anne Bright is here as a guest of Jim Bright. Yes, and if she hasn't gotten you yet about Teachers Warehouse, she's looking for you. And we have Mark Peterson, a guest of Steve Engel, who is a potential member in process. Welcome. Thank you, guests, for coming. And if you have any questions and would be interested in finding out more about our club and Rotary, please talk to any of our members, our president, anyone else. Okay, thank you.
Joy, are there any members online, guests that are online?
Yes, there are members. No, there are no guests.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. And rumor has it we have some birthdays this week. Fred Dunn on July 20th, Amy Garsh, July 17th, Charlie Osborne, July 21st, and again, Ashley Wesley on the 21st. And if you haven't heard it already, Ann is here soliciting members to sign up for Saturday's supply drive. The supply drive really is a way for Teachers Warehouse to gain the needed supplies for the year. And we position people at various locations, Kroger's and again, Staples. And again, you need to support us. And we need you to, if you haven't already and you're available, we need some people, particularly from 2 to 4 at Kroger North. So if you can do that, please see Ann before you leave, and would be much appreciated. One other announcement, Glenda Murray and I met with the Historical Society several months ago, looking at the treasure trove of artifacts that we have from Bloomington Rotary for many, many years, stored at the Teachers Warehouse. And if somebody would ever want to write a book about notables in Bloomington, wow, what a treasure trove this would be. We need to put a committee together to work with Glenda to sort through some of this and maybe even digitize it as we get to a more appropriate technological space on this. But if you would like to work with this, and I'm calling out all future or past librarians and future librarian wannabes, and anybody else who wants to be an archivist, Glenda will help you and we'll get through this, but we do need your help. So talk to Glenda or me if you have questions. Happy dollars, appropriate for Teacher Warehouse. Anybody want to share their happiness with us today?
I'll find my money later, but as you know, I'm the interim director of the Buzzkirk Chumley Theater for this month. We just hired a new director yesterday. He starts on August 21st. I'm very excited about him. You'll read more as soon as we get the press release together. But for right now, I just wanted to call your attention to a really special event at the theater tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, Rasan Barber and Everyday Magic. I know Rasan because he was a student here at IU, worked in the music school with his twin brother, Roland. He's a saxophonist, Roland's a trombonist. And they went on to New York. They played in New York for 15 years. He's now teaching jazz at the University of North Carolina. They have a special grant that allows them to come here for way below their normal charge. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to see some really great New York jazz for a reasonable price at the Buzzkirk Chumley tomorrow night. And for you guys only, maybe not only, but special deal, 2 for 1, buy one, get one price if you just put in jazz as the promotion code. So hope to see you tomorrow night.
Thanks, Sarah.
I have two, so here's $20. First, for my nephew Caleb, he sold 8 paintings at First Friday, which is amazing. And second, for those of you who don't know, Proof is on. It's a local production at the Waldron, and I think there's like 10 tickets left for tonight. It sold out last night, sold out the night before. It's all local and amazing. So if you want something to do tonight, highly recommend it.
And it's a great play.
I just want to remind folks about the book club tomorrow night. I know there's a lot of people interested in many things in this town, and I hope to see fellow Rotarians or anybody you want to bring there. I have plenty of food, believe me. Bye.
I'm going to piggyback on Sarah. I have Happy Dollars just because, but I also have 2 tickets because I bought 2 and I forgot I bought 2. So I bought 2 more and I would love to give them to someone. So now you don't even have to buy one, get one free. You can get them free.
I am happy. I have $10 to express my joy that after 6 months of effort, we are within 1 month, within a month and a half, I should say, of getting to the end of the dental treatment of the Afghan family that we support. It's been a 6-month undertaking. They've had major work. Your club, our club, has fundraised for their treatment, and they will be all smiles here very shortly. And I'm happy.
Thank you, Dave. Connie?
Thank you. I have 2 doses of Happy Dollars. One, after all that trouble I made out of Gus. Poor Gus, he's having terrible surgery. He never had an inch of pain. He was perfect, no problem. I could just kill him for that. And now, since Proof has been mentioned so heartily, I must mention the play that I'm in at the Brown County Playhouse on Golden Pond. I'm playing Ethel, which is the old grandma, and it's the first 2 weekends in August.
Thanks, Connie. Anybody in the Zoom Happy Dollars? Ann has one up here, and we'll call that our last Happy Dollar of the day.
Well, I'm happy that your money goes to Teachers Warehouse, your Happy Dollars money. They say thank you. And I'll give $10 Happy Dollars to Teachers Warehouse because 30 of your club members have signed up to work at our supply drive this Saturday.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Ron, there's $25 from Marcus Devereaux for Happy Dollars in honor of you.
Thank you, Marcus. The program today really is fitting with our new president, Rotary International presidents, Bring Hope to the World. One of his major goals is for us as Rotarians to have a better understanding of mental health and how mental health plays into all of the issues of the world. So to introduce our program today, Peggy Frisbee is here.
So Ron, that was a good intro to my intro. So we are at the start of a new, a new year in Rotary International and also for our district and our club. Rotary International's new president, Gordon McInerney, I know how to say that, asks Rotarians to create hope in the world. And in particular, he asks us to create hope for those in the world who suffer from mental illness. How? He says we need to work to, first, erase the stigma associated with mental illness. Second, raise awareness about mental health needs. And third, work to improve access to mental health services. So McInerney says this effort is personally important because he has seen someone close to him suffer in silence. Although we might think first of the headline reports about violence and homelessness, for example, when we think about mental illness, many of us, like McInerney, think of someone close, a family member, a friend, a coworker, someone we care about personally, who has a mental illness which must be lived with every day. Our speaker for today, Linda Grove, comes to us with tremendous knowledge and experience. Working for over 25 years now to create hope for those with mental illness here in Bloomington, as well as in much of Indiana. Linda is currently Vice President for Adult Services in Indiana for Centerstone, a multi-state nonprofit mental health system. As such, Linda is responsible for programming provided to adults. This programming includes, but certainly is not limited to, developing services for those with substance use disorders, for those who are reentering community life after incarceration, and for those in need of supportive housing, as well as the many, many others who need help in a mental health crisis. She's a leader at Centerstone in the state and also in national mental health service community. And she works on building collaboration among government, private individuals and companies, and nonprofit organizations, and obtaining substantial increases in awareness and funding. I've known Linda for most of the 25 years that she has been engaged in this work, and I can personally testify to her fearless passion, her intelligent, caring leadership, and her tireless dedication to creating that hope, which is so needed for those with mental illness. Linda?
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Peggy. Really appreciate it. I don't think I've ever been introduced by a friend before too, so that's great. Well, thank you guys so much for being here and for allowing me to come talk to you. It's such an important topic, and there's not much time. So I'm going to do my very best to zip through this as quickly as I possibly can so that we can make sure that we have plenty of time for questions. As usual, I pack a lot of information in. So if I overwhelm you a little bit with info, my guess is you'll have access to the information. I think first and foremost, I really just want to make sure that everybody is aware of the Stride Center that we opened 3.5 years ago here in Bloomington, and the mobile Stride number. So we have mobile crisis for anybody with a mental health or substance issue, and we have a place for people to go 24/7, 365, and that is the number. So that is kind of first and foremost, want to make sure that people are aware of. Stride Coalition is a coalition that was formed just by the community, Crisis in Kirkwood back in 2017. You know, so many people were overdosing in our community. And I think everybody just said, what can we do? How do we come together to do more to support these individuals in our community whom we care about? Representatives from 38 different organizations. Forrest, I see here, you know, we had lots of Marcus and Community Foundation. It was law enforcement, Melissa from BPD, really representatives from all facets of the community came together and said, you know, we need to do more. One of the main issues that we, you know, really were looking at is the fact that, you know, if you have, so first of all, in Indiana, there is no crisis infrastructure. Okay, so I mean, you know, we're going to talk some about 988 in a minute, but you know, to understand when you say,
hey, what do we do with people in the middle of the night when there's a mental health or, substance problem? There have been no resources. What's exciting now is there are some resources that are here, but that is something that's pretty new. And when we came together as a group, we really said, what are the major problems in our community? And law enforcement, hospitals, pretty much everybody was saying it's the 2 o'clock in the morning problem. What do you do when it's not Monday through Friday, 8 to 5? What do you do when things are closed? We need to be able to have access to resources when we need those resources. And the problem with lack of any kind of crisis services is you don't have on demand, right? It's like, oh, I need an appointment. Well, you can get an appointment in a week, like you do a doctor's office. No, you have to have something that's really comparable to like an emergency room type care, because if you need that service, you need it right then. So lack of on-demand resources, lack of place to go. That was probably the biggest issue is, we were looking at programs all over the country to say, hey, we want to make sure that we have services available. But even if we go out and we meet with a person and provide a service, if they need a place to go in lieu of jail or in lieu of the hospital emergency room, where would that safe place be to go for them to de-escalate? Lack of training to address crisis. Again, if you dial 911, if that's really the only solution, what you're going to get is you're going to get law enforcement responding to a mental health or substance crisis. That's not who really needs to be there. And even if you have training, which they do have some training for law enforcement, it still says, there are plenty of people who don't necessarily trust law enforcement, and law enforcement isn't an appropriate response to a person who's in a mental health or substance crisis if it isn't an active crime. And finally, kind of the lack of connection and follow-up for those individuals is a huge problem. So really, as a group, we really said, hey, the place is really what we need to focus on. We need to have that place 24/7, 365 for people to go to. So with funding from IU Health Foundation, as well as that coalition we put together, we developed this program that operates it's actually part of the county building. It's on Morton Street. It's called the Stride Center. And it's a living room model, which basically says it's meant to feel like a living room. So a person who's in crisis, they can come to us any point in time, day or night. We de-escalate, we have trained staff that are able to meet people where they are. It's very much a harm reduction. So people who are coming in, even an individual who might be in crisis, they could very well have been actively using drugs or alcohol, but they need a safe place to go. We also worked very closely with the prosecutor's office to say, hey, what are some of the things that typically might criminalize an individual, but their intent is not any kind of criminal activity. So, they just basically need a place to go to cool off or, have a safe place. So this is, where we connect people to resources, engage with peers, and then connect them to care. So, an example might be a person who overdosed. That individual might very well go to the hospital, and that individual may say, after hospital's ready to discharge them, say, I don't want to go back home, because if I go back home, I'm going to go back to that exact same environment. I want to be able to get into a substance residential treatment, but hospital isn't going to be able to connect them with that immediately. They can come to Stride, and we do that. So there's a lot of connections that we're able to do in terms of resources. So these are the Stride guests from the time that we opened. So we opened September of 2020, so right in the middle of COVID. It was a great start. And you can see the number of guest visits that we've had over time, and that those guest visits are continuing to grow. This is a very busy slide. I like to put everything together, so this gives me fewer slides, all right? But I think it gives you a good sense of the guests and the data that we collect. We have a lot of information, and I think it tells a lot of really important stories. One's, kind of the demographics of the individual in terms of age, gender, obviously more men than women. In terms of the diversion type, you see co-occurring is really the number one. So that means mental health and substance. So most of the people that we're seeing typically have a combination. It may be substance only, or it may be mental health. And then, a small smattering of individuals who don't clearly endorse one or the other. In terms of referral sources, you can see that self-referral is the greatest. About 62% of people are just kind of walking in themselves. Might be a family member, somebody who calls to say, hey, what are the resources that are available? Sheriff's Department, it's about 8%, BPD, 20%. And again, really working very closely with our law enforcement partners to identify individuals who don't need anything other than mental health and substance treatment or resources available to them. So IU Health is something that we've continued to grow in terms of getting more referrals from them, and then IUPD. So I'd say, we have a great relationship with IUPD as well as state police. We don't necessarily get a whole lot of referrals from them, but they say, hey, whenever we send a referral, we are getting people connected with exactly what they need. I'll also have you look at the housing status, because if you see that, you can see that 83% of the people that we serve, the guests that we have, are unhoused. So, those individuals are individuals that oftentimes have a lot of mental health and substance needs. And they are coming to us, and typically when they first come, it's just kind of checking it out. What are the resources? What are the services that are available? And then, 3 or 4 visits, you can see how frequently people come visit. That 26% that comes only one time, typically those aren't very complicated people. We need to get connected with a resource. Maybe, you had a major mental health issue, you get them connected and they're on their way. I'd say with the unhoused, oftentimes those are people who come back more frequently. And, the first time they may come for one service or resource, but, eventually 3 or 4 visits later, yeah, I do have a problem with meth, or yes, I do have a problem with my mental health. I haven't been med compliant. So it's really establishing a trusting relationship with those individuals. Finally, I think ethnicity is really important to point out, because one of the reasons why we wanted it to be the Stride Center and we wanted it to be in the community is we wanted it to be in a non-stigmatizing location where it didn't feel like it was necessarily associated with any particular agency or mental health in particular. The vast majority of individuals that we work with do have some kind of, whether it's a mental health issue or substance, but some paranoia. And so really having in a safe place that is low barrier, no barrier makes a huge difference. And especially amongst the African-American population, a lot of, distrust with sort of just the system in general. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were actually serving the individuals in our community that need to be served. And if you look at the population of people who come in for mental health services, it's typically more like 6% as opposed to 16%. So I think people are going to vote with their feet. So I think looking at those demographic numbers has been important. Also, just, in terms of making sure that people get to us, law enforcement, we want to make sure that drop off happens within 5 minutes. So a person comes, law enforcement's able to get in and out, and, of all of the drop offs, they have met that. In terms of satisfaction with Stride, you can see, individuals have said they're very satisfied. Their confidence that their needs have been met is high, and the mood and when they first come in versus the end of the visit. So, we've got some really good data here. And then, you can see what are the things that people are looking for when they come in and what are the connections that we're making. This is a slide that really just talks a little bit about, so in Indiana with the health insurance expansion, basically, anybody should be covered by an insurance plan in Indiana if income you're eligible. And so really I'm reaching out to the plans to say, hey, let's look at the data that says for individuals who have come to Stride, can we see a benefit of just Stride as an intervention? And working with Anthem, they're like, got me on the phone right away and said, oh my gosh, yes, this is amazing. And what you're looking at here is claims for individuals 6 months prior to their first impact or their first contact with Stride, and then that claims data for that same individual 6 months post that first visit. And what you're seeing is a 28% decrease in ED and inpatient utilization. So, that is a powerful, powerful number that I think really demonstrates that we are accomplishing what we're hoping to accomplish. To pivot, I know hopefully everybody at this point is familiar with 988 and the fact that that is, a relatively new number that is an alternative to 911 to call if a person has a mental health crisis, mental health and or substance. So really want to just make sure that people are aware of that and are utilizing it. Legislation just passed not even quite 3 years ago, so it is really new, but this work that we're doing fits right into the whole 988 system. So as we talk about 988 and think about it, it's really intended to be more than a number. It's a chance to transform crisis care, right? So, and this is, kind of nationally, these are exactly in each state, like at lunchtime on Wednesdays, there's a national group where everybody gets together from all of the states and really talks about how are we doing this together as in sync as we possibly can. So, the three components are one, someone to contact. So that's 988, and 988 is managed by Division of Mental Health and Addiction. So you call 988 in Indiana, it's live. Somebody's going to answer and somebody's going to respond to you. Somebody to respond, that really is sort of mobile crisis. So when we talk about that, if somebody calls 988 and they actually physically need to see somebody beyond just talking to somebody on the phone, as opposed to calling 911, a mobile crisis person can be deployed, and then a safe place for help. And the safe place for help is exactly what we've already put in place with Stride. So we have that in place already. And, I think this is just a nice graphical representation of, again, the person is in crisis, they call 988. That's sort of that crisis line or the number, the Stride number I gave you. Mobile crisis team can come out, work with that person, resolve that hopefully in the field. You're fine. You don't need to go anywhere. But if you do need something else, we can take that individual into crisis facility Stride. And then just making sure that we're following up with those individuals. And as a consequence, it's easy for law enforcement and you're getting a connection to treatment instead of arrest. So you're decreasing jail, ED, ambulance, hospital, all of that, which is, exactly the reason why we started the Stride Center to begin with. Oops, too fast. So mobile is kind of the second pillar that we have added in the last year. So Stride Mobile is a team of crisis care and peer specialists. So again, from the Stride Center, we actually have a mobile crisis unit that is there. It's embedded at the Stride Center. So 24/7, starting January the 3rd, we have 24/7 mobile crisis here in Bloomington. How many of you guys knew that? Right. So 4 or 5, maybe. This is part of the reason why I'm glad I'm here and I'm talking about it. And I want you guys to really think, hey, where else should Linda go and talk? Who else does she need to be talking to? Because a lot of people still don't know about it. In the beginning, it was kind of like, okay, it's good. We're getting it staffed up. But, we really are at the point where we want people to feel comfortable in calling and reaching out to us. So they're deployed from Stride to any community location, and that we serve Monroe and surrounding. So all of the counties surrounding us, we serve as well. And we've had a lot of activity from Morgan, quite a little bit from Brown and Owen, but a whole lot from Morgan, and a little bit from Lawrence as well. 24/7, 365. The thing that's different here is Stride just serves adults because it is a facility, right? 18 and older. But in terms of mobile, we serve children. And technically, our grant that we wrote that is for Stride is for children 5 and older. But if you're having a problem with a kid under 5, it's the parent that needs the support, probably not necessarily the child. So you can make the referral. So we just say any kids, we can take, and we can provide transportation. That has been just a huge key to especially responding to more rural locations. A lot of times people just don't have a ride. They don't have a ride to get to Stride. Law enforcement, talk to in Lawrence County, and they'll say, look, on the weekends and evenings, we only have 3 officers total. So how are we going to send somebody, off in the event that something else comes up? So, and then we do follow-up visits with those individuals. So if we get a call from somebody, they're concerned, maybe their adult daughter is suicidal and they're saying, hey, I want you to get connected. Not only are you going to connect with them initially, you're going to do those follow-up visits as well. So this just gives you some data on mobile responses. Thus far, we've had 175 since we started. And you can just kind of see the uptake. We did sort of a soft launch in November and December. Talk about urgent and emergent as opposed to well checks, because the well checks in the beginning, we were just kind of like, yeah, we can do those, sort of when the individual needs it. But as you can see, those numbers are climbing. The median response time is 33 minutes. Again, because it's a little bit more rural, it's a little bit longer. I'd say if it's in town, it's typically about 10 minutes. And 97%, almost all of those have been diverted from any kind of law enforcement involvement, which I think is important. This just kind of tells how long it takes. Okay, that's the amount of time it takes for us to get there and how long it takes to resolve on average the situation. So, some really great resources that are available there. Again, this just, I think, gives you a sense of, 7% of the people that we're serving are youth at this point, 93% adults. That is the wrong slide, by the way, because the race and ethnicity is not accurate on that one. I replaced it. But anyway, and in terms of who are we serving, you can see that the counties primarily that we've served. We have actually opened a second Stride Center in Columbus and Bartholomew. We opened that in April. Don't have the information on that, but we also will have a mobile team that's associated with that. So we do have some mobile services during the day, which is why you see Bartholomew and Decatur, Jackson, Jennings, and Johnson, is that we are doing some services from that location as well. And yeah, I think that's a duplicate. So here are the demographics again of that. And I think, yeah. So our 2 locations, Stride, that's the number. And then there's the Stride Center in Columbus. And that 800 number, again, questions, concerns, somebody wants to come see the Stride Center. They have questions about what I call it for this, what I call it for that. I encourage people to call that number, find out. A lot of, as Peggy was talking about, a lot of people have a loved one or family member. They're not sure what should I do? What should I do in this situation? Who should I call? Should I call 911? Should I call 988? Don't hesitate to call, because we're the ones that will do the triage. But so much of the time it's just not knowing, who do I reach out to? What do I do? We also are happy to give tours to anybody who wants to come have a tour of Stride. I think it's much easier to, with law enforcement, we spend a lot of time, we go to roll call, we train the officers, because we're asking first responders to have to sell Stride to people as well, or mobile. They need to know what they're selling, who they're selling it to. They need to be familiar. And I think the more we do to make ourselves comfortable with this, the more inclined we are going to be to reach out directly or to, call 988. So this is just, I think, a graphic that we made that I think is helpful. And doggone it, I can't tell you how many times I've replaced this slide. That second column says the same thing that the first one does. I will correct that and send that on. But basically, the 911 is, your typical, there's some sort of an emergency. It's a medical. It might be, some kind of a criminal. There's something that you're really concerned about happening, and 911. That's just kind of an automatic gut check. 988, that's hard. And we are all hardwired to call 911, right? Like that is what we have been doing forever. And as a consequence, sometimes we do end up sort of criminalizing. And that's the whole point, is we don't want people to get caught up in the system. This is the best way to do prevention, early intervention, is if you don't need to call law enforcement, don't call law enforcement. Call, call for support, help, get the information. But because it hasn't been here, they haven't had any choice. They've had to respond. And I think, Melissa, I've heard recently, that 911 call volume just continues to go up and up and up. And so, they want to make sure that the resources are triaged appropriately as well. So, recognizing if a person's in crisis, you can call the crisis call center. They can work to get people on an inpatient unit, but also, locally call Stride if you have a mental health. There you get your crisis call, mobile stabilization, and then we really are the ones that can connect people to care. So that's it.
A lot of questions out here. Why don't you just stand up here?
Could you, I hope it's not too difficult, can you provide an example perhaps of a person who made that touch to Stride, got some services? What types of services did they get? Where are they now? Kind of paint the picture after that initial crisis moment.
Sure. There's a lot of different examples. I would say, one person was a gentleman that came in and was unhoused, very disorganized, had been unhoused for, probably 9 months to a year. And he initially came in just, looking for some resources, was feeling very depressed, was pretty paranoid, hadn't been on medications, and just wasn't really sure, exactly what he wanted. But, kind of to make that connection, law enforcement did bring him in. There were, some minor issues that were going on with him. And I would say typically, because you don't have to stay, right? So, they're bringing people in voluntarily, and oftentimes people are like, okay, I don't have to stay. Bye-bye. Because they just want to make sure, like, is this truly not coercive, right? I want to just make sure that I can. And so it's kind of building that relationship. And we've seen that with a lot of people who come in initially like, what is this? And then, as I said, staff are peers, they're individuals with lived experience, as well as individuals who do crisis de-escalation and are able to work specifically with them. And this is a gentleman that came back many times. When we talk about people who have come in 10 times or more, and eventually, he did come back and say, yeah, I have a problem with meth. We're all like, yeah, it's been clear, but I really want to get help with it. And that is very typical of individuals that come in, or maybe, I have a problem with meth and I haven't been seeing a psychiatrist. I'd like to get in with somebody there. So this is an individual who wanted to do residential treatment. And when somebody comes in, our staff is amazing at being able to get people admitted same day. So find a substance residential treatment program, again, acute care hospital, got that person in, he completed, he came out, he went to recovery housing, and has kind of, done the whole thing, and comes back and regularly comes in and sees staff on a regular basis. He brought donuts a few weeks ago. So those and that's not an untypical trajectory. It's not that everybody necessarily, decides that they want to get treatment, but most people, and that's kind of why I was showing that data of 83% are unhoused, is most people, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? When they first come in, I need housing, I need food, like, what are the basic things? And they want to be listened to as well and treated with respect. And so when they come in and they get their needs met, because I do mobile crisis sometimes, I'll help, and, I'll have to take somebody up to middle of the night, up to Options in Indianapolis, or bringing somebody over to Wheeler. But they were like, the staff are so amazing at getting people connected to the care immediately, that I think it really establishes a very strong relationship for them with the staff, and knowing that their needs are going to get met. So just a lot of connections like that.
In the case when law enforcement is not involved, and let's say your mobile unit, how do you protect your employees, and they're going into the home, they're not really sure exactly what to expect if a patient becomes violent?
Yeah, we have a lot of safety protocols that are in place. And, I know that's something that we've reviewed a lot with our law enforcement friends too, is just saying, what are the scenarios? So anytime we deploy, it's teams of 2. And I would say, you know, if it's the middle of the night, oftentimes, you know, we might deploy because like, you know, for example, there was a fire. And, you know, there was somebody who was just really beside themselves. And so they called us to come on scene. So sometimes we might be on scene. Other times it might be, you know, a more public place. It could be, you know, the emergency room, something like that. But we're usually going in teams of 2, unless, like I say, it's pretty clear that, you know, it's okay for one person to be there because you're at the hospital or you're in some other public place. And then we have, you know, again, a lot of safety protocols just to ensure that we're not showing up to somebody's home in the middle of the night where, you know, weapons could be there or dogs or things like that. So we do have protocols in place. And if it appears that we're not safe, we may very well have to say, we need to call law enforcement to come with us, but safety is a number one. Good question. Thank you.
I have a lot of questions, but first of all, thank you for helping and providing this service in this community. I was a little surprised with the number of men that are being served. I would have thought it would have been the reverse. So could you speak to that first of all? And secondly, to give us some idea of the qualifications of your staff. Are they social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists? Who are they?
Okay. So in terms of the data, you know, it is interesting and it does move a little bit, although once you get to this point, it's about 60-40 in terms of men. And I would say, you know, Forrest, I don't know about the unhoused, but I'd still say it's more men than women that are out there. So if we look at the data there, now what's interesting is if you looked at the mobile numbers, that is a little bit more heavy to women. Rather than the men. So I think maybe the likelihood of actually utilizing the mobile service as opposed to coming in is a little bit greater there. And then remind me what the second question was. Oh, staff qualifications. Yes. So we have, you know, a team of master's level therapists, coordinators, team leaders, who are in place that are supervising as well as providing services. And then we have bachelor's level crisis care specialists, all of which who have been very specifically trained to work with crisis. So, you know, I think that crisis training is really important. And then we also have peer recovery specialists that are also crisis specialists that are trained very much in the same way that our bachelor's level staff are. And then they're supervised by therapists and ultimately under a psychiatrist.
Charlotte.
Thank you. And having had been involved with people who have severe mental illness, I'm questioning what makes it people willing to even remember the 988 number that they should call for themselves. That surprises me that many would do that. And then the other question was, if one, I live downtown now, in which I love, but there are a lot of interesting people walking by in the middle of the night on the B line. And what do we, if they're singing or dancing or yelling or screaming or something like that, what does one do in a situation like that? These people are not going to call 988. They're just going to dance and scream down the street.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have a good answer to that one. I think that, you know, again, we are in a position where, you know, we have a lot of, you know, we have some great resources that are available for crisis, but that's kind of what the focus of it is individuals who are in crisis. Now, I would say, you know, what's helpful is, and again, I've seen that with law enforcement or the downtown ambassador. Charles Culp, you know, works for the city of Bloomington, and he's, you know, downtown late at night, especially as people are partying, you know, to try to direct traffic. And I think if he identifies somebody who really is mentally ill or, you know, is actively, you know, perhaps psychotic and, you know, as opposed to calling 911, he really would contact us and have us come out and try to work with that person and get them connected to care. So I think it is identifying, but I will also say, you know, one of the pieces I didn't get to talk about in this presentation are community presentations to help prepare people to know what to do. So like mental health First aid is a program, that we provide, and, really focusing on like business owners. What do you do? When do you call? Sort of what are some of those protocols too? So this is like a huge lift in terms of community education, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done to truly transform sort of our crisis system. But I think today is, an important start.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Linda. I'm sure we can ask Linda to stick around for a few minutes if you have individual questions you didn't get a chance to ask today. Again, what a fantastic presentation. And in honor of your presentation, we're going to give this quarter to Stone Belt a contribution in your name. So thank you again, Linda. It takes a lot of people to run a meeting like this, particularly when the parking lots are full and the rooms changes. But I do want to thank Steve Wicks, our greeter today, Peggy Frisbee for our introductions, Joy Harder, of course, as our Zoom host, Judy Schroeder's fine reflection, Glenda Murray, who is our reporter today, Michael Shermas, who's our camera operator and chased around the room rather well today. And again, Tyler, for your excellent work in helping us. Next week, believe it or not, we're going to be back in this room. And as rumor has it, we'll be back in here through August at this point, or to August, I guess. But stay tuned, that always can change. Kid Kazooie, a musician, will be with us at the next meeting. That ought to be a pretty exciting meeting. So be sure to come. Come early so you make sure you get your parking. Tyler, we want to put up the graphic for the four-way test. And please join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Or will it build goodwill and better friendship? Or will it be beneficial to all? And fifth, is it fun?